Hey everyone, I'm Lisa Campion, and this is Psychic Stories, your podcast for extraordinary tales, paranormal, and spiritual experiences shared by everyday people, everywhere from ghost stories to angelic encounters and beyond. Today we have a fantastic guest, Leah Guy, and she's going to talk about. She's incredible. She's just a spiritual teacher, speaker, intuitive healing artist, incredible psychic. She's the author of 3 books, including Overcoming Toxic Emotions, as well as a one-woman show, The Night of the Soul, The Light Night of the Soul. And she just uses her story, which is something I think we can all relate to, her personal triumphs over recovering from sexual abuse, addiction, anxiety, eating disorders, as well as 2 decades of her experience working in a private practice, helping people transform their lives and change their lives. And I'm excited to speak about her latest audiobook on Weeden Street, which shares her story of purchasing and moving into a haunted house on the day of COVID lockdown and the healing that transformation that happened, I think, for all concerned there. So welcome so much to the show, Leah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Wow, there's so much we could talk about. I always love talking to my fellow intuitives and fellow psychics, but because this we're focusing on sort of more of sharing our psychic experiences, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to let us in on what's going on with your experience with buying a haunted house on COVID lockdown. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, the timing of it certainly was, and it wasn't planned on my end, but it seems, we have things that work out for us for our stories and for our teachings that we sometimes don't realize. And so I moved in the day of COVID lockdown in New Jersey anyway, and it's almost a 200-year-old house. It looked in disrepair, but in no way did I didn't sense I didn't look at the house from the lens that I normally go to look at people's houses when I'm doing clearings for them or when I'm just kind of tuning in because I was so excited about buying my first home. And I just went with the perspective of, is this a good purchase? And I'd known in that area that there was a lot of historical haunted houses and stories, and there's ghost tours around the area and that kind of thing, but it was really kind of strange. I did not give it one single thought of, is this house haunted, before I bought it. Long story short, I ended up buying it and moved in. And it was probably 2 or 3 weeks after I moved in, that things just started kind of happening, and they weren't that odd at first, but they became stranger and stranger and stranger. I'd find objects in the garden, which, on the one hand, people go, oh, we find all kinds of stuff in our garden. But we were only like tilling, an inch or two underneath the surface. And we were finding like candlesticks from 1800s. And we found a gun and we found teeth and, all this kind of stuff. And then I'd move things from the facing of the house, and there's weird energy in the house and sounds, the building shaking, the bed shaking, these invasions of these huge spiders and bats, and a tree fell on my boyfriend's car. Like, it just kind of kept going on and on. And then I started having these nightmares. And after I had a few of the nightmares, and after some of these incidents had happened in the house with, in particular, things gone missing and stuff like that, I reached out to the previous owners, because one of the reasons I purchased in this town is how safe the town is. Like, there's hardly any crime, there's no burglaries, there's no major incidents, that kind of thing. And so I reached out and I was like, had anything ever happened here as far as like things being stolen or whatever? And she said, no, not at all. And I said, okay, well, just some weird things have happened. And then I started, I said, I've also had these weird nightmares. And then she tuned in via text saying, oh my gosh, I had the same thing for like the first 9 months of her living in the house. And so we kind of chatted back and forth. And in fact, we were talking about the same energy that was appearing in these night terrors to each of us for months and months on end. It got to be very exhausting. But I felt, validated in a certain way, because not only was I in this house and it was in the woods, and I was thinking, well, maybe I'm making all this stuff up. Maybe I have these like old fears that are rising or that kind of thing. I mean, it's COVID, no one was getting out. I didn't know anyone in the area. So there's a lot of room there for me to think, oh, I'm going crazy. So
Right.
it was nice to have this validation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And were you a person that had a lot of psychic experiences before this happened?
Well, I am an intuitive and I work with people. And like I said, I've done a lot of work in people's homes.
Mm.
And I have physically seen on 3 or 4 occasions, energy and spirit appear. So yes, I would say yes, but this was a different level, or it was a different kind of thing. Maybe because it was personal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened? Were you able to find out what had happened there?
Well, so I write all about it in the audiobook. I speak all about it. And I've written about it for my one woman show. Ultimately, yes, it's a fascinating story. It turns into a fascinating story. Um, of course, I reached out to, mediums and psychics and ministers and ghostbusters and all kinds of people. And then I started going directly to spirit and source on my own, and had very just mystical, magical experiences that happened to lead me to understand the story at the house and also how to resolve the energy. So, yes, ultimately, I did resolve it. It took years, and it was a very fascinating experience.
Mm. Can you give us a little thumbnail of what had happened there and who was there?
Sure. So the whole hillside at one point was a shanty town. It was like an African American shanty town back in the day. So there's multiple things going on. There's a burial pit on the land. At one point at the turn of the century, my house, I believe, was a brothel, but not like a traditional brothel. And so the whole hillside, the way it um, felt to me, it was like it was carrying this very old toxic energy and a lot of kind of trapped, um, pained energy in it. My neighbors were also mentally unwell, and I don't say that lightly. There were some very serious issues. They've both since passed since I've owned the house, both in their house. Um, there was drug addiction in my house before me. There's just been this ongoing generation after generation of um, challenges mentally, spiritually, energetically in this land, it seemed like. And the brothel situation did not help the situation help. But the short story that put together at my house was this energy that was attacking me and the former owner in our dream time. I don't even know if he actually lived at the house, but he definitely had some tie to the house, and he was claiming ownership of it. And there was abuse going on there of young girls. Like that was kind of the brothel situation. They were being prostituted out and harmed. And there was a lot of young girl energy in the home that was lovely and sweet and very endearing and healing and just beautiful. But they were kind of perpetually scared, and trying to find their own resolve. So that's kind of the short of it. And I think I got the negative energy out eventually.
Yeah, it takes a lot of healing, I think, to do that. And, I think sometimes when we watch like paranormal TV shows, we get this, or horror movies, we get this idea that you can kind of come in and be like, demon out or
Right.
ghost out, and then it's one and done and it's gone. And I find for me when I did it, and I did it back in the 90s when, because I was working as a psychic, and people would my friend called me once and she said, will you come over and clear this house? She was a realtor. She was trying to sell the house. Nobody would buy the house. And she's like, I think there's some weird energy in the house. Will you come over and look at it? I had zero idea what I was doing. And I was like, sure, why not? I'll come and help you. And it just opened up. I did it for about 10 years after that. And this is before there was paranormal TV, before there was no manual on how to do it. I was just feeling my way through it. And I found, and I wonder if you had sort of a similar thing. It was sort of more like doing therapy than doing any ghost busting, like that sort of longer term process of resolving trauma over time, like we do in a therapeutic situation, rather than like demon out and one and done. Did you
Yeah,
find the same
yeah.
thing?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So some homes I clear, um, I think when I think of clearing homes, it is more of like energy removal, energy dissipation, that kind of thing. But when there's entities, it's a whole different story, you know. So
Right.
yes, I would say, and I actually use my opportunity in the house to do more healing work on my own traumas and simultaneously work on the energy in the stone and the walls and the floor and the ley lines and I learned how to create literally like portals and energetic protective lines around the property and so forth. And so it was a lot of work, and it was 2 years. It's funny because when I tell people originally about the house, they're like, have you burned the sage? I'm like, oh my gosh, my I know all about sage. My company name is Modern Sage. Like, yes, I've burned the sage. I did all the things. I've put the money in the corner. I've put the crystals around. It's not about these superficial things. It's about energy and history and generational trauma and societal beliefs and psychic pain and all kinds of stuff that's going on. So
Yeah. Well, it's so beautiful. And I feel oftentimes there's sort of like a magnetism, like, like somehow you were the right person to come into this house. And I don't know if there's, I mean, maybe it's a happy accident, but I wonder if there's some sort of like contract or some opportunity there that like brought you to that house and created such a profound healing for the house, the neighborhood, and yourself as well.
I think so. I felt very called to the house from the beginning, and I wasn't really clear why. I was just kind of like obsessed with, I had to have it. I saw it, I rejected it, and then I was like, I have to have it. So I did feel called to the house. When I had the Ghostbusters come, they actually told me they can't do anything, that I'm here to do this and that I have to be the one to do this. I had other mediums tell me that I had to do the work on the house. And then as the story unfolded with this information, I got these Bible verses passed down through my grandmother, who's deceased for 15 years. There were even scriptures and verses that I came across that she had written down about, like, when you are protected enough from the city, you will be taken to the land and be cloaked in protection in order to deal with the spirits there. It's really wild. That's what I mean. The whole story. It's a crazy, wild story. So I do feel that. And there's times when I, just going around the area where the house is located, which is about an hour and a half from where I am now, there's certain points where I have a remembering. I feel like, I've been here before. I didn't really feel that at the house specifically, but around the area, I definitely have, a very, very strong remembering.
So do you think that you had a past life there or somewhere
Yeah,
that
yeah. I mean, I hesitate to say that because people think, I don't know, me in a past life, a woman walking around with a bonnet on her head, on the land. But there's definitely some knowing, some energetic connection to there for sure. Yeah.
wow. And is that a place that you're still living now? Are you still do you still own it, still live in it?
I still own it and I live in it sometimes, but after about 3.5 years and after COVID, I needed a break. So I Airbnb it sometimes, and I go back and spend retreats there or just time off there. And now it's just beautiful. It's just a lovely place to be. It's got the most calm, peaceful, sweet energy in it. People love being there, and I love being there. I don't know if I want to live there full time again. Not because of the house. It's more kind of about the size of the town and just what I'm doing in my life now and that kind of thing, but I love it. I can't imagine never not having that house.
It's cool. I love
Yeah.
that. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful story. And if people are listening and they think they might have an entity or residual energy or something going on in their house, where do we start? I mean, once we've done the sage, what would you do? Like if somebody was asking you for help with that?
Well, I think it really does depend on the narrative that's going on in the house, like what's up. But I always usually recommend speaking to them, not shying away, but being verbal, and both verbal out in our outer language, but also verbal in our inner dialogue. If there is any communications going on with sounds or lights or electricity or in your dream time or what have you. I think, a big piece for me at this place was taking full ownership of the house, of my own stuff, of my own traumas, of my own mind, my own life, of space that I take up. It was a big stepping into all of that fully. And, in my book and in the show, I say, houses aren't haunted, the people are, and even when the spirits want to be hanging out, they only want to because they're usually lingering with some kind of unresolved pain. And if we can speak to that and also let it mirror to us, where is this familiar for us? And build a relationship, not as a way of connecting to it and like embodying it, but as a way of understanding it and kind of dissipating it. Not to think of fighting it, but to think of, empowering ourselves in the face of it. Then all that stuff can be very helpful.
Oh, that's beautiful. Because I think so many of us, especially if we've watched a lot of paranormal TV movies, we have this sort of adversarial relationship, like, where we see them as harmful or, and we have to fight them. Like you said, I think it's so much nicer. And sometimes we have to claim boundaries or, we have to sort of hold our ground a little bit. But I think that's a more, I don't know, just a more healing and really beautiful take on it is to embrace what's happening and see where the work is, right? Because these things can, reflect back to us like what's going on in our own system. And that sounds like that's the process you went through.
Right. Yeah. I will say, so I wrote a movie script also, which I'm trying to sell now. And in the movie, it is because it's a movie, there is some of that being at war with the thing, but there's also the resolve, like what we're talking about here. So I'm really happy with the movie.
Cool.
But yeah, when you try to Hollywood things, it kind of comes out that way.
Yeah, Hollywood expects that battle, and the fight. What's it called? What's the movie going to be called?
Well, right now the working title is Obsidian.
Obsidian. How's it going? Any bites on the script?
Well, we've really just now started pitching it. I wrote it last year. So we're just now in the process of starting to pitch it. So I'm hoping to have some good news in the next few months. That's my feeling. Yeah.
I love that. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the show that you're doing. What's that all about and how's that related?
The Light Night of the Soul. It's a one-woman show. I kind of wrote it simultaneously as I was writing the movie and going through kind of coming out of this whole experience. And it's also an empowering piece, an inspirational piece about learning to trust the darkness and healing the ghosts of our past. So it's more personal, it's more autobiographical. I do tell more of the story of the house and my experience going through it. But it's a very personal piece that I think a lot of people will see themselves in.
And how can we watch that if we wanted to?
Well, right now it's just live in person. So I'm going again in November in Jersey City. And then over the winter, we'll figure out how to tour it, if you will. I don't want to be on tour every week with it. It's not that kind of thing. But, I certainly want to take it around to various places. And so I guess my website would be the best place to find out when and where it's showing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing.
Where are you located?
Providence. I was going to say come up to Providence.
Oh, okay.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. And how does this loop into your newest book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions? Did that come out around the same time or that one's pretty new, right?
No, actually that book's been out a couple of years and I wrote it while I was in the house. So that's the way that's connected. But it doesn't tie into this specific information. I'm about to write a new book. So that one will have more in it, but the Overcoming Toxic Emotions is really just a kind of an accountability piece and practical ways to recognize our own patterns and how we become kind of attached to them, and we replay out our patterns of toxic emotions and what ramifications that has on our health and our mind and relationships and how we manifest and everything. So that's what that book is about. I love that book.
That's cool. Yeah. Seems like a great book. And like it, I think so many of us are in emotional turmoil and emotional pain that it's so hard to get rid of. Like we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to escape those emotions. Maybe we go into our addictions or we go into zoning out or all sort of all the bad behaviors that we have. And I think really leaning into those emotions with support, with, some love on them. That's the same thing you were talking about. Instead of an adversarial relationship with our emotions, can we soften around them and really let ourselves feel them? And I've always, when I've done ghost bust, I don't even call it ghost busting. I used to call it ghost therapy, because it always felt to me like I was doing therapy. And I grew up in a really haunted house right outside of Boston. In a creepy old Victorian house. And if you drove by it, you'd be like, that house is definitely haunted. Like, one of those. And when I was little, my parents, like, the house was so big, they sort of put me in this wing by myself. Like, it was like down this long hallway and was so far away from my parents' room, they couldn't hear me if I cried. It was like, and then I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there would be all these people around my bed. When I was little, I called them the gray people.
I had that too.
Did you?
I did.
Oh my gosh. And I was never really afraid of them. Like, they didn't so much scare me, but they were really sad. And I knew if I listened to their stories and sort of felt compassion for them, and like, I'd be like, okay, tell me about it, and they would talk and talk and talk. And talking, it's kind of like, for me, it was like a combination of all my psychic gifts. So I would see images of like little movies about what they were saying. I would hear their voices. I would feel it, emotionally feel it in my body. Just know, like, I would kind of get the whole package of their experience. Like, here's my experience, And if I just kind of breathe through it and listen, then they would go away, or they would move on. Sometimes, a lot of the times. So I grew up that way, and I figured out when I was older that I think it wasn't so much the house that was haunted, it was because I was there. And as little psychic children's, oftentimes we're ghost magnets, like they're, especially when we're sleeping, we're like lighting up the astral plane at night when we're asleep, and they're coming around like, I'm so tired of being lonely, will you just talk to me? It's not really that different from living people. I've never been afraid of ghosts, actually. Living people scare me on a pretty regular basis, but ghosts never did. Even sometimes the really, the violent ones, like you were, like, sounds like you encountered one that had a little more hostility in it. But was it sort of the same for you when you were a kid?
Well, so I didn't have groups of the gray people. I remember one profound experience that it did terrify me. I was also trying to call out for help for my parents, and they couldn't hear me. I couldn't get to their bedroom, and I saw the being down the hallway, and I went back to my bed, and this gray being came and sat on my bed. And I remember laying there because I didn't know what it was at the time, and I was so afraid that I was trying not to breathe because I thought if they think I'm dead already, they won't kill me. But they weren't really talking to me. It was just this presence, and they were like almost stroking my back kind of thing. And then I stayed that way until the sun, the little bit of light came into the room. And I remember at the time looking over to the dresser and seeing like this white bird. And it was so bizarre. And of course, I was young. I was like 4 or 5 at this time, maybe 6. And even that scared me. Like the whole thing scared me. But then as I got a little bit older, I recognized, oh, that being wasn't against me. It was actually here to comfort and soothe me. And it was like this dove of peace, um, on my dresser was there. And then I'd had other experiences of seeing like groups of children. Like one time I was traveling and it was in this old hotel, and there was this little gaggle of children just kind of bouncing and like they were in a choir or something. That didn't scare me. The other times I've been witness to any energy visibly hasn't scared me, but I wish I knew now what I could have used then to be able to, communicate and actually um, use the support of these spirits in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I would sometimes see really dark things, too, and scary things, I would see angels, I would see everything. I don't know, just all kinds of stuff. And I don't know why it never scared me. Even the really creepy ones, sometimes I would see them, like when I was little, I called them in their with their dead face on, but it's
Mm.
really when they're stuck in their death state and they look sort of corpsey. you know, especially if they had a traumatic death or like kind of a violent death, and they'd show up that way. And I just, even though it was kind of gross, I wasn't scared. It was more, I felt like they were showing me look what happened to me. Oh my God, that car accident. Look at can you believe this? You know? And I would just be like, oh yeah, that's not good. That's not good. That must suck, you know, that kind of thing. So I didn't feel scared. I've never really felt scared of spirits, even the shadow ones I saw.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. People, on the other hand, were way scarier for me. So, and I think it's because my first memories are scenes of seeing spirits. So I'd really see them almost like before I even knew what people were. I was seeing the spiritual world. So I think that's kind of an unusual, not everybody has that. But I know so many people who have like trauma around their gifts, you know, their childhood experiences, and actually like PTSD around whatever they experience as kids and have to work that out. You know, they come to psychic development class when they're older and we have to work that through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So cool. So Leah, how do people get in touch with you? How do people get your incredible audiobook, or choose if they want to work with you? How do we do that?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is leahguy.com. It's leahguy.com. And most everything is there. Or follow me on social media at Leah the Modern Sage. That's my handle, which you'll also find on the website. And sign up for the newsletter. I just sent one out today. And so people can stay connected or see things that are coming up, and hopefully, be involved.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to sign up for your newsletter. Just going to see what happens with your movie. You know,
Oh, good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a good feeling about it. I feel like it's going to go somewhere.
Oh, good. Thank you. I believe so too. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your amazing story. I did buy a copy of your audiobook, but I haven't received it yet. So
Oh, well, let me know if there's trouble there. It should be in an email link.
yeah, I didn't get the email link. I got to check my spam and see if it showed up there.
Okay. But let us know if not.
Cool. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you.